shivering under blankets, sleeping under piles of blankets covered in snow.
Imagine waking up tomorrow in Vancouver with no home, no phone, no help, and no place to escape the winter. Imagine realizing that by nightfall you'll be sleeping on a sidewalk. Not because you chose to, but because there is nowhere else to go. And as the city lights turn on and the temperature drops, you start asking questions you never thought you'd have to ask. How do I stay warm? How do I stay awake? How do I make it to morning? Because this is what Vancouver Homelessness Hell 2025 really means. This, why the words Homeless Crisis 2025 and Vancouver's Winter Hell aren't just titles or thumbnails. They're a warning, a reflection of a winter where promises feel distant, survival feels uncertain, and thousands of people are quietly facing nights that could change everything. Stay with me through this video, because I'm going to show you how people end up here, what survival really looks like when winter sets in, and why this crisis isn't as distant from our lives as we like to believe.
Yeah, but that's just Abbotsford. How many in Vancouver? How many thousands in Vancouver? How many hundreds or if not thousands in Surrey, Burnaby, New West, Mission, Chilliwack?
Vancouver's winter, when the night decides everything. What if tonight, in Vancouver, winter decided everything for you? Where you sleep, how you survive, whether tomorrow even feels certain. Because this is how the homelessness crisis really unfolds here. Quietly, suddenly, without warning. I've walked these streets at night. I've watched people prepare for sleep like it's a test they never signed up for. Counting layers, scanning doorways, choosing spots where the wind might be weaker. Because once darkness settles in, the city doesn't pause for them. And what makes this harder to accept is where it's happening. In a city known for safety and progress. In a country that promised no one would be left behind. Yet as 2025 begins, winter keeps arriving faster than solutions. Stability keeps slipping further out of reach.
It's getting colder and colder, and they keep moving us around. Like, where did they expect us to go? Like, we have totally nowhere to go. Every spot that we have to camp.
You know, you'd wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and your fingertips and toes are frozen. Even doubling up on gloves as these are, they tend to freeze, and the ears, sometimes they feel like, you know, they're gonna fall off. That even when you go into someplace warm, they start to tingle and they start to throb because they have gotten so cold.
Starting to develop health issues.
Oh yeah, like my arthritis. I have arthritis and it kills like I have to keep myself warm any way I can. They come and kick us out.
And homelessness becomes harder to ignore. Because if this is what the night looks like before the cold truly sets in, then the question we have to face next is even heavier. What happens when the temperature drops further, exhaustion takes over, and survival turns into a series of impossible choices?
The mayor is talking about his plan to stop building new supportive housing in Vancouver, specifically in the downtown east side.
That's horrible. That my chances of housing just went down how many percent? That sucks.
It reminds me of before the Olympics when they were, I was told by many people that they were handing out bus tickets to the homeless and stuff to get them off the streets so they could have it cleaned up for the Olympics. And now it seems like they're doing the same thing just to get, I think, it seems like they're trying to get the neighborhood back for the real estate or whatever, I don't know. They don't have anywhere for you to go. They just tell you to get off the street and take all your stuff. So like, you can't even keep anything, or like blankets and stuff. They throw it all in the garbage every day on you.
How people survive winter on Vancouver's streets. As night settles in, people begin preparing long before the cold reaches its worst, because survival here is planned in small, careful steps. I've seen people search for cover, under bridges, beside buildings, and near walls that block the wind, places that offer a few degrees of protection and a sense of being unseen. Cardboard becomes flooring, plastic sheets become shields, and every layer placed between the body and the concrete matters. Some people sit upright through the night, backs against walls, pulling jackets tight, while others lie still, wrapped in whatever they manage to collect that day. Not resting comfortably, but conserving energy, the streets grow quieter as the hours pass, and movement slows, because staying warm often means staying still. And through it all, there's an unspoken awareness. No one here is sleeping deeply, no one fully relaxes. The heat, cold, the noise, and the uncertainty keep everyone half awake. And while the city continues just steps away, these hidden pockets of survival remain mostly unnoticed. And if this is how people make it through the night, sheltered only by shadows and borrowed materials, the question that follows is unavoidable. How long can this kind of survival last before it takes something back? How life unravels before anyone notices in Vancouver. Most people here didn't arrive all at once. They arrived slowly, through small losses that didn't seem permanent at the time, a job that ended, rent that rose faster than income, a health issue that didn't heal quickly. Support that faded when it was needed most. And what stands out when you listen closely is how ordinary these beginnings sound. No dramatic collapse, no single mistake, just pressure building quietly until stability gives way. I've heard stories that start with working full-time, with plans, routines, and responsibilities, and end with sleeping near a wall because it blocks the wind, because once housing is lost, everything else becomes harder to hold on to. Appointments, work, recovery, even hope. And in a city like Vancouver, where costs rise faster than safety nets, falling behind can mean falling out entirely. And what makes returning so difficult is how quickly life on the street reshapes everything. Energy is spent surviving the day, not planning the future. Trust becomes fragile. Time moves differently. And while the outside world often asks why people don't just get back on their feet, the reality is that standing up again requires stability that's already gone. And if this is how easily life can unravel, the question that follows is one we can't avoid. What happens when surviving takes so much effort that there's nothing left to rebuild with? Coping with the cold. When survival meets mental strain, living this way doesn't just wear down the body, it slowly wears down the mind. The constant cold, the lack of sleep, the uncertainty of what tomorrow brings. Over time, the weight becomes heavy. I've seen how mental strain builds quietly out here, how anxiety settles in when nights feel endless, how loneliness grows when days pass without connection. And for some people, coping becomes about finding relief, even if only for a moment. Not to escape life, but to soften the edges of it, to calm the shaking, to quiet the thoughts, to forget how cold the ground feels beneath them. Substances, for some, become a way to manage pain, both physical and emotional, when support feels out of reach and options feel limited. It isn't about recklessness, It's about relief. A pause from stress. A break from fear. A way to get through the night. But this kind of coping comes with its own risks, especially when mental health needs go unmet and when help feels distant or complicated to reach. What stands out most is how closely survival and struggle become linked. How easily the need to endure one night can turn into a cycle that's hard to step away from. And if this is how people cope just to make it through the cold, the question we're left with is an uncomfortable one. What happens when relief becomes the only support available, and winter isn't the only thing people are trying to survive? Why getting help in Vancouver is harder than it sounds. From the outside, it can seem simple. Help exists, services exist, support is available. But on the street, reality feels very different. I've learned that getting help often means navigating long waits, complex rules, and systems that assume stability people no longer have. Appointments require time. Paperwork requires focus. Follow-ups require consistency. All things that become difficult when every day is about staying warm, staying safe, and staying alert. Mental health support can feel distant when survival takes all your energy. Shelter space can be limited, and temporary solutions don't always lead to long-term stability. Even when someone wants help, the path forward can feel unclear, overwhelming, or out of reach. What's most striking is how easily people fall through the gaps. Not because they didn't try, but because the system moves slower than crisis does. And over time, hope doesn't disappear all at once. It fades, quietly, gradually, until surviving the day feels more realistic than believing in change. And if help is hardest to reach when it's needed the most, the question that stays with us is this: what happens to people when the system meant to catch them arrives too late? What this crisis says about us, when you step back and look at it all, it becomes clear this crisis isn't just about homelessness, or winter, or even addiction. It's about visibility, about who gets seen, and who slowly fades into the background of everyday life. Because these streets don't exist in isolation. They exist beside offices, cafes, apartments, and warm homes side by side. And over time, something subtle happens. We adjust, we get used to it. We stop asking questions, not out of cruelty, but out of distance. What makes this moment so important is not how extreme it looks, but how familiar it's become. People sleeping outside in winter. People surviving in shadows. People carrying stories we rarely stop to hear. And yet every person here is still someone with a past, with memories, with hopes that didn't disappear. They were interrupted. Awareness doesn't mean having all the answers. It starts much smaller than that. It starts with noticing, with remembering that these are lives, not scenery, with understanding that stability is more fragile than we like to believe. Because when a society becomes comfortable with people enduring the unthinkable, it's not just those on the street who are affected. It changes all of us. And if this is where we are now, the final question we're left with isn't about blame or solutions. It's about what we choose to see, what we choose to acknowledge, and whether this story ends with silence or with understanding. where hope begins, and how change takes shape. Despite how heavy this story feels, it doesn't end in darkness, because prevention doesn't start with grand solutions. It starts earlier, with stable housing before crisis hits, with mental health support before isolation turns overwhelming, with help that arrives before survival becomes the only focus. Across Vancouver, small shifts are happening. Outreach teams meeting people where they are, shelters adjusting to winter realities. Support programs focusing on stability, not just emergency response. It isn't fast, and it isn't perfect, but it matters. Because when someone is met with consistency instead of confusion, with care instead of judgment, the cycle can slow. Recovery becomes possible. When people are warm enough to rest, supported enough to think clearly, and seen enough to believe they still belong. What this crisis teaches us is that homelessness isn't permanent, but ignoring it can make it feel that way. Progress happens when we understand how easily life can unravel, and how powerful early support can be. And maybe the most important shift of all is realizing that prevention isn't just about systems. It's about awareness, about paying attention before winter decides everything, about noticing before survival replaces stability, about remembering that change often begins quietly, the same way crisis does. Because if this story has shown us anything, it's that compassion isn't naive. It's necessary. And while the road forward is slow, the fact that movement exists at all means this story doesn't have to repeat forever. Sometimes, hope doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives as the decision to finally do better and keep going. Thanks for watching. If this video meant something to you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.